Now on Inside California Politics.
We need the For the People Act more now than ever.
Senate Republicans block the For the People Act, but the fight isn't over yet.
I'm not giving up on this issue at all.
The next step in the push for voting reform.
And Governor Newsom is accused of misleading the public.
It's important, again, to hold leaders accountable to the words that they use to describe these projects.
We'll go inside the investigation into California's wildfire prevention strategies.
Broadcasting across the Golden State, this is Inside California Politics.
Thanks for joining us for Inside California Politics. I'm Frank Buckley in Los Angeles.
And I'm Nikki Lorenzo in Sacramento. This week, Senate Republicans blocked the For the People Act, a sweeping Democratic voting rights and government ethics bill. The measure failed a procedural test in the Senate as Republicans voted against beginning debate on it. But the fight isn't over yet. Senator Alex Padilla joins us now with what he says is the next step towards expanding voter rights.
Senator Padilla, Senate Republicans say states should set their election laws, not the federal government, and that's one of the reasons they say they voted against the For the People Act. Was this expansion of voting rights the federal takeover elections that Republicans said it was?
It is absolutely not a federal takeover of elections, and to really make it clear for everybody, it is always going to be state and local governments that will issue ballots, collect ballots, count ballots, and frankly, administer the election. What the For the People Act would do is set a baseline of voter protection, voting rights and access to a ballot for all voters across the country based on a lot of the reforms that we've implemented successfully here in California. And there's plenty of precedent for Congress to act, from the Federal Voting Rights Act, the National Voter Registration Act, the Help America Vote Act, all which was done on a bipartisan basis over the years. But Republican members of the Senate just aren't going along with it. It's shameful. We see voting rights under attack in state houses across the country, which just means we need the For the People Act more now than ever.
In the wake of the defeat, though, in the Senate, you made it clear you think the Senate's filibuster needs to be eliminated. Here's what you tweeted about on Thursday. You said, the system is broken when Republicans only needed 51 votes to cut taxes for the rich, but we need 60 votes to defend the fundamental right to vote. And yet the senior senator from California, Senator Dianne Feinstein, says she's not sure the filibuster needs to go. Do you agree with progressives who say it's Senator Feinstein who needs to go, that her views are out of step with today's Democrats?
Yeah, no, look, I think there's, for some of my colleagues on the Democratic side, a difference between eliminating the filibuster altogether, which I'm for, or possibly reforming the filibuster to allow at least this, protecting our voting rights to be able to advance on a simple majority vote. The real issue here is Republicans, and let's look how the year started. A deadly insurrection in our nation's capital on January 6th, and a couple of weeks ago, because of the filibuster, Republicans kept us from establishing an independent bipartisan commission to look into January 6th. So they've completely walked away from the notion of a peaceful transfer of power. And by using the filibuster to keep the For the People Act from advancing, now they're walking away from protecting our fundamental right to vote. So it is not an exaggeration when we say our democracy is under attack. The stakes are too high.
Also this week, there was agreement on a bipartisan infrastructure deal, as you know, a victory for the Biden administration, but a number of Democratic priorities didn't make it in the areas of health care, child care, college education, climate change. The president says he won't sign that infrastructure bill if there isn't a second bill to address those areas. Republicans oppose that. So the only way to do that is through reconciliation, in which you won't need Republican votes. That's not exactly a bipartisan approach to governing, is it?
Well, look, if you want a bipartisan approach to governing, you need both parties to generally want to try to govern on a bipartisan basis. I've seen no shortage of effort since I've been in the Senate this year by Democrats, whether it's on the American Rescue Plan, which was adopted earlier this year, the For the People Act, And here in negotiating an infrastructure package and behind the scenes, still conversations about voting rights and immigration reform and police reform. Democrats would love to do this on a bipartisan basis. Republicans can't seem to get to yes.
All right, Senator Padilla, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Take care.
Coming up, Governor Newsom is accused of misleading the public about wildfire prevention efforts. We'll go inside the investigation into his alleged false statements. The recall election is officially on. This week, the California Secretary of State's office confirmed it verified more than 1.7 million signatures from supporters of the recall petition. Only 43 people withdrew their names from the petition, but there were still more than enough signatures to meet the 1.5 million threshold. So the next phase of the recall process is up to the state's Department of Finance, which is tasked with estimating the total cost of the election. The Department of Finance must present two separate estimates, one for holding a special election and another for holding the recall in conjunction with the next regularly scheduled election. And this week, the governor is also being accused of misleading the public about wildfire prevention efforts ahead of what is expected to be a brutal wildfire season. An investigation from Cap Radio and NPR's California newsroom found the governor misrepresented his accomplishments and also disinvested in wildfire prevention. Cap Radio state government reporter Scott Rodd joins us now. Scott, your investigation, along with your colleagues, surrounds these priority projects, more than a dozen of them. And in your reporting, it states that the governor misled the public on California's wildfire efforts. Take us through that.
Sure. So these projects were a priority for Governor Gavin Newsom when he came into office. There were 35 of them, and their goal was to thin out some of the forest land, make fuel breaks, and do prescribed burns to protect some of the most vulnerable communities in California. In early 2020, the governor said, mission accomplished. We completed these tasks and we treated 90,000 acres. And treated means we did work on 90,000 acres. So we dug into some of that data, and we found that actually less than 12,000 acres had work done on them, and which is about 13% of what Newsom claimed.
And that's pretty alarming, too, considering, all of the information that we're receiving from experts, meteorologists, fire officials. We're about to head into a really bad fire season.
We just came off of a historic wildfire season, and it's looking like we're heading into another potentially bad season as well. So that's exactly what experts are saying is we need to do this prevention work. It is essential to get it done. And they're saying the work that we're doing now, or even claiming to do now, we need to do even more of it.
So you spoke with Tom Porter, the head of CAL FIRE, for your piece. Pretty lengthy interview, about 40 minutes, I believe. And it seemed like he, sort of fell on the sword for the governor and said, we could have done a better job in informing him about some of the numbers and the information.
The way that CAL FIRE framed it is we did this 12,000 acres of work, and that work protected the 90,000 acres that were much larger. They also said that there were some challenges with getting environmental clearance and also getting landowner clearance on some of these lands in order for them to do more work that would get them closer to that 90,000. And he did say, look, the work we did, as I said, protected that 90,000, and we could have done a better job in communicating to the public and to the governor's office in terms of what this means, what treating that land means, what doing that work is, and also what it means for that work to be benefiting the larger area.
All right, so after your story came out, CAL FIRE did respond. I want to read part of this statement. This is a lengthy statement, but they did mention your reporting, and I want you to give you a chance to respond to it. So it says, acreage tracking for fuel reduction projects is complex, and we think the CAP radio story did not explain some of the important distinctions. There is a fundamental difference between fuel breaks like the 35 priority projects and other landscape level fuel treatment. What do you say to that?
Look, we took a look at the statements from Governor Newsom and from CAL FIRE, actually. They put up a fact sheet while these projects were being done, and they said these projects will treat 90,000 acres. Newsom said at the end of them that they treated 90,000 acres. So we used those statements from CAL FIRE and the governor to hold them accountable and see, did you in fact do this work on 90,000 acres? And we found that they didn't. Now, CAL FIRE's saying that the work that was done, again, protected that bigger piece of land. And if that's the case, that's a good thing. It's good that these communities are seeing protection, but it's important, again, to hold leaders accountable to the words that they use to describe these projects.
Scott Rodd with Cap Radio, thank you so much for joining us here on Inside California Politics. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, heavy criticism for Senator Dianne Feinstein, why California progressives are asking for her to do more or step aside.
Progressives say they are fed up with California Senator Dianne Feinstein, and some are now calling for her resignation. Political reporter Seema Mehta with the LA Times and senior political writer Joe Garofoli with the San Francisco Chronicle join us now to break it all down. Joe, Seema, great to have you both back inside the bullpen. Joe, I want to start with you. This discussion about Dianne Feinstein resigning has seemed to reignite it. I want to quote a piece that you wrote recently. The first line says, progressives aren't just boiling mad at Senator Dianne Feinstein. Again, some want the senator who has been in office since 1992 to resign. What are progressives so mad about now?
Well, now there's an existential threat to Joe Biden's what he wants to put on the books, and they want her on board, particularly with the filibuster. She has been a long-time opponent of the filibuster, but now she's sort of had these sort of vague statements over the last couple of days, weeks, saying, well, if there's no other way to get bipartisan support for something, I'm open for changes to the filibuster. But she hasn't quite expressed her desire to get rid of it like just about every other Democratic senator. So they're concerned that without that, Joe Biden's agenda goes nowhere.
Yeah, there was a headline, Joe, this week from the Sacramento Bee that said California's new senator, meaning Alex Padilla, is ready to end the filibuster, and Dianne Feinstein is, quote, thinking about it. Seema, I want to talk about, what has changed, because Senator Dianne Feinstein has always been seen more as a moderate. The California Democratic Party is more of a progressive party, more to the left. So they have not always seen eye to eye, but something has definitely changed this time around, because you're seeing elected officials, someone like Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez out of San Diego, who is saying it's time for Senator Feinstein to step down.
Senator Feinstein has always been more moderate than the California Democratic Party. However, the party has grown more liberal. The state has grown more liberal since she was first elected to the Senate. So things that were once appealing to, say, the average voter in California, it's less so the case. And I think that's why you see elected officials, elected Democrats, who are now speaking out about Senator Feinstein's policies, her behavior, her moderation, her attempts to reach across the aisle. Just because California politics are different now than they were when she was first elected, and the Senate's a different place now than it was when she was first elected. You don't see as much bipartisanship. You don't see as many relationships across the aisle. So I think that the Senate that she came to and that really that molded her for decades. We're talking about almost 3 decades now. It's just a completely different place.
All right, Joe, so this past week, there was a letter that was sent to Senator Feinstein by a number of activist groups that have been calling for her to step down or to vote in favor of the Voting Rights Act that you mentioned. Will this ring true? I mean, it doesn't seem like in the past, Senator Feinstein says, look, I'm not going to be pushed out here. I've been here a long time, and no one's going to tell me it's time to go.
Right. She's been pressured by the left for decades, even going back to her early days on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors more than 50 years ago. So she's withstood this type of pressure in the past. And there's no one close to Feinstein that I've talked to has said that she has given any indication that she wants to leave early. Remember, she's here until 2024, and she's already filed the papers. It's a formality to run again when she will be 91 years old. So I don't see Feinstein leaving early unless she gets more pressure from elected officials. You mentioned 2. Or you mentioned Lorena Gonzalez. There's also Ash Kalra, another assemblyman from San Jose, is spoken out against her. But other than that, bupkis, no elected officials. That's when it'll start getting real.
Yeah, Seema, you haven't seen someone like Senator Alex Padilla. He's been pretty quiet on this. I imagine he's going to stay quiet considering he worked for her.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a really important point to make. First of all, anytime anybody has even broached this idea with Senator Feinstein, the idea of questioning her age or her fitness, she digs in. She does not really respond well to that. So I think there's that point. In addition, while you are seeing some elected officials now, speaking out about her and her tenure, in terms of the top leadership of the Democratic Party in California, whether it's the governor, whether it's the other statewide elected officials, whether it's Senator Padilla, whether it's Vice President Harris, none of these people are going to say a word about her leaving.
Some of the Democratic consultants that I've kind of spoken with off the record about Senator Feinstein, they're like, she's an icon. When she wants to go, she should be able to call those shots. And she is not the only old senator or old lawmaker in Washington right now. There are plenty of old lawmakers, and you could call their records into question and say maybe it's time for them to go. I mean, is it sort of unfair?
Well, I think some people argue that it is, and they argue that it's sexist. And I think, especially if you talk to Democratic women in the state who are, perhaps middle-aged and older, a number of them really do view it as sexist, because there have been a number of men who are older than Senator Feinstein who continue to serve, whose behavior was questionable, and they didn't face these types of calls, at least as vocally, in my history that I can remember. So there is definitely a segment that believes that this is because she's a woman.
Joe, weigh in on that. I mean, the name that comes to mind is Chuck Grassley.
Chuck Grassley, who is considering a re-election next year, he's 88. The average age is 64 in the Senate. There's very few professions where there's a mandatory requirement that you retire at a certain age. But we do it for pilots, we do it for other professions. What about the Senate? I mean, can there be term limits? Of course, you will never get that through the Senate because they would have to vote on it. There have to be another way.
We'll have to leave it there. Joe, Seema, thank you for your time here on Inside California Politics. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, President Biden says he's agreed to a bipartisan infrastructure deal, while Congresswoman Maxine Waters says she does not support any agreement that does not include housing. This week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced she would create a new committee to investigate the events leading up to the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Congresswoman Maxine Waters has been calling for an investigation like that. She joins us now. Chairwoman Waters, as you know, Republicans blocked the 9/11-style commission to investigate the January 6th attack on our Capitol. Late this week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced there will be a House Select Committee to bring together all of the House investigations under one umbrella. Are you satisfied that a House Select Committee will provide the answers about who is behind the attempt to stop the certification of Joe Biden as president?
Well, here's what I'm sure of. I'm sure of we cannot do nothing. There was a great attempt by the Speaker to get this commission. We worked very hard to identify and work with the Republicans on some of the concerns they claim they have, but they are not supporting it. They did not support it. And if they think it's just going to go away because they're not supporting it, and you have Fox News and some of the others who are trying to, create other, responsibilities to other entities that somehow had something to do with it. They're accusing the FBI and on and on and on. We're not going to buy into that. We have to move forward.
Let's move on to this week, President Biden announcing an agreement on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Does it have your support? And if it does get through the Congress, what should we expect to see here in California in terms of infrastructure improvement?
Well, as you know, the infrastructure possibility is something that, so many of us look forward to. It would help to stimulate the economy. It would create jobs. It would also deal with the infrastructure problems that we have with roads and bridges and water systems and all of that. But I am the chair of the Financial Services Committee, and I have great proposals for housing. Housing is infrastructure in my understanding of what is needed in order to have a strong infrastructure bill. And so I'm looking for housing to be included, and I'm not committing to anything until I see that housing is, we've got to get the homeless off the street.
Looking ahead to the midterms and then the next presidential election after that, this week Senate Republicans blocked the For the People Act, a major agenda item for Democrats to expand voting rights. Were you disappointed that that President Biden didn't do more to push for its passage?
Well, I want us to really have all of the Democrats and this administration absolutely committed to the proposition that we cannot go backwards. We cannot allow voter suppression to take place in the way that it is in these states that are coming up with these voter laws that would literally suppress the vote. And so I'm not giving up on this issue at all. As a matter of fact, I think we have to work harder, we have to press harder, we have to do everything that we possibly can to protect the right to vote in our democracy.
The blocking of that bill prompted many Democrats, including the junior senator from California, Alex Padilla, to push to end the filibuster rule in the U.S. Senate, as he put it, to protect our democracy. The senior senator from our state, Senator Dianne Feinstein, says she's still thinking about that. And that has prompted a number of progressive groups, as you know, to call on her to resign. Should Senator Feinstein resign?
Well, I'm not going to call on her to resign, but I do know that there are real concerns about her as she is not able to make a commitment about filibuster. The progressive community and, most of us in the Democratic caucus are progressive. We want to do what it takes to get rid of the filibuster. And so I'm hopeful that she will come out very soon and she will join with us, but otherwise she will be under great criticism.
You can see more of our interviews online. Just head to your local station's website and click on Inside California Politics. Thanks for watching Inside California Politics.
We'll see you back here next week.